Good evening or good day, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of the Nordic Football Podcast, wherever you are in the world. My name is Jonathan Fadugba, and I'm joined as ever by my colleague and friend Steve Wyss. We're back for another episode. Hope you enjoyed last week's look back at the Danish Superliga season, and we are now going to get back. There's been a sort of a mini sort of summer break in our leagues in Norway and Sweden. Sweden has had a bit of a 2-3 week break, but we're back at the end of this week. We've got a round coming up and the fixtures will return. In Norway, we've just had a round as well. So, as always, I'm joined by Steve Wyss, and we're going to talk about what has been going on in Norway and Sweden. Steve, my friend, how are you? And before you tell us how you are, I did hear that you had a bit of an accident. So I know you're going to be a little bit sore on this one, but just generally, are you surviving?
I'm a little bit bad and bruised. I just had a fall in my garden yesterday, which has left me with some minor injuries. Nothing too bad, yeah. Apart from that, I'm doing very well, thank you, Jonathan, my old friend. I hope you are ticking along nicely yourself. And yes, we did have this sort of early summer break, if you want to call it that, in Norway and Sweden. Eliteserien is now back. Allsvenskan returns next week. So it's good to be back and into this summer groove of the campaign. It's great to see a lot of people sort of being interested in the Scandinavian leagues at this point in time. Seeing a lot of tipsters out there suddenly becoming Obosligaen experts or Icelandic football experts, stuff like that. It's that time of year, and I love it.
Definitely is, and we're going to dip into all that. Well, not Iceland, but we are going to dip into the latest. I mean, the last round in Norway was actually this weekend just gone, but the previous round before that was on the 28th of May, weekend commencing 28th of May. So this is the first round of fixtures we've had in June, 18th and 19th of June. I will read you the results in a minute, but just in terms of your little accident there, Steve, I mean, any regular listeners on this show will know that you're certainly not someone who tends to sit on the fence. So I'm not surprised that you had a bit of a fall from it.
I fell off a fence. Yeah, I fell off a fence.
You've fallen off your fence. But, fair play to you, mate. I hope you recover well. And even though you're bruised, I'll try and go easy on you in this episode. Just for the listeners who are wondering, part one will be Norway. We're going to recap what's been going on in this latest round and generally in the table. And then in part two, we'll go to Sweden and we will look at transfer season. It's obviously the main talking point.
There might not even be two parts for this episode. Depends.
Yeah, there might even be two parts. You can divide it, get your cup of tea. But yeah, basically that'll be the second part of the show. We'll look at the latest transfers because there's been no games. So I'm going to read you the results from the most recent round in Norway. We had Sarpsborg 5, Strømsgodset 1 on the 18th of June. This past Saturday just gone. Kristiansand 0. My boys Bodø Glimt 2. Glimt getting an away win. And then on the Sunday we had FK Jerv 1, HamKam 2, battle of the newly promoted sides. HamKam came out on top. Lillestrøm 3, Rosenborg 1, defeat there for the big boys Rosenborg. Odd 1, Molde 2. We had Tromsø 1, Haugesund 1, Viking 1, Sandefjord 2, surprise there, and Arlesen 2, Vålerenga 2. That leaves the table, if you're wondering, looking as follows. Bottom three, we have Kristiansand, bottom of the table, 16th place with 1 point from 8 games played. We've got Jerv, 15, 7 points, 10 games played. So Kristiansand have 2 games in hand. And then in the relegation spot in 14th, we've got Haugesund on 9 points. And they've played 11 games as well. So Jerv have a game on hand on them. And obviously Kristiansand have 3 games in hand on them, but they're struggling for points. And then if we look at the top of the table, we'll come to a few of the shocks because we've got Rosenborg in 8th, for example. Glimt in 6th. But you've got Viking in 3rd, Molde in 2nd on 25 points, Viking on 21 points, by the way, 4-point gap. And then at the top of the table, Lillestrøm, unbeaten, 27 points. So the table's looking, I'd say it's looking a bit rosy, isn't it, Steve? Would you agree with that? I mean, it's kind of looking a bit fresh compared to the previous years we've had where, Glimt have kind of all conquering. Molde is still hanging in there, but yeah, it's got a bit of a sort of clean look to it, hasn't it? What's your take on it so far, 11 games in, Steve?
Well, it's obviously, there's a few surprises there. No one would have thought Lillestrøm would be unbeaten at this stage of the season. There's been some positive surprises, like someone like Sarpsborg, for example. Godset have probably done better than most people thought. the likes of Glimt, Rosenborg maybe lower than some thought. And then down at the bottom, if you'd said to me any team would have just 1 point right now, I'd say no way. And for it to be Christiansen is incredible. So, yeah, it's a different sort of look this year. There's it's been a strange old year, but I think now there's going to be a run of games together coming up. Then now we've got the European qualifiers as well adding into the mixer soon. It's going to be a bit of a mental period, I think, up until the next international break. But I think the next international break isn't at the end of August like it normally is. It's not until like end of September, is it, or something daft like that? So, or mid-September anyway. So it's going to be a really long. This is the season right now, the crucial part of the campaign coming up.
Yeah, we're going to start with well, I don't know where to start really, but I'm actually going to start with the bottom of the table clash. I want to ask you about Jerv Hamkam. Goals from Schroeter, Melgalvis, and Kirkevold, and assists from Kirkevold as well. So anyone playing fantasy, he was a good one to have in your team this past week for Hamkam. Very decisive there. And I just wanted to sort of, you mentioned Christensen there, for example. We did have about 2 or 3 episodes ago, we did sort of dip into Christensen and we evaluated their problems. Don't know if much has changed, since then. Obviously, there's been no games. So we did dip into their issues. And we have looked at a few other teams, but I haven't really had too much on Jerv and Hamkam. So I'd like to get your take on that. I think the episode that we discussed then was series episode 9 about May the 18th. I think we talked about Christensen. But Steve, just tell us about this Jerv Hamkam game. It looks like Hamkam are sort of 9th in the table, having a fairly decent season, aren't they? Two wins from 10 games, 6 draws, so they're quite hard to beat, only 2 defeats. And Jerv, as we've said, they're second bottom. What's your sort of take on these two teams so far this season?
In terms of the actual match, I'm going to have to do a bit of an Arsene Wengerism here. I didn't see it, and I still haven't seen it. It was of all the games that were on at that stage, I had my eye on all the other ones, but I actually thought this was going to be such a bad game of football, I didn't bother. I just couldn't be putting myself through that. So I've not even had a chance to review this one. It looked like on XG terms it was a close one. Hamkam got a couple of goals in the first half. I certainly I leaned towards them because Hamkam are the better of the two sides. Jerv, I do think Jerv will finish bottom of the table, Jonathan. They're starting to show why we knew they would struggle this season. The squad just isn't good enough, really. They've had 2 or 3 injuries as well. And yeah, they won a couple of early fixtures, but it's becoming quite alarming for Jerv. And eventually, I would think they actually will finish bottom. Christiansen should pick themselves. I'm not saying Christiansen are going to get themselves out of trouble, but they should finish above Jerv, really. So, yeah, they're the whipping boys right now, I would say. Jerv, they're conceding way too many chances. The goalkeeper had some good performances early in the season. And in terms of Hamkam, they needed a win. They kind of forgotten how to win games, hadn't they? A lot of draws, but that's just their second win of the season. First victory on the road. The 3 points will do them the world of good. And it's really important that you beat the teams around you or the supposed matches that are winnable. So crucial result for them. I'd say I've not actually seen the game or even many extensive highlights of it, so I can't comment too much on the fixture itself. But I think both teams are kind of going in separate directions now.
Yeah, the goal from Kirkevold was a nice sort of left-footed free kick, actually, a decent hit. Second goal from Melgalvis there. Shocking defending from Jerv, I have to say. 3 defenders getting drawn to the ball, which is obviously not what you expect to see maybe at a high level of football. But yeah, and then obviously Schroeter's goal, kind of a consolation really, wasn't it, in the 82nd minute? Decent finish, bit of a keeper mix up there. But not too bad for them, but didn't do enough to get a point. We've got our friend Tom Dent over at Hamkam. How do you feel about them, and who are their kind of key men? Has there been anyone that's impressed you this season in the team? Just to give them a bit of a shout out.
Yeah, obviously there was a lot of talk pre-season about Christian Eriksen. How would he get on at Eliteserien level? He was linked with Rosenborg pre-season, and he's looked good. He's played every single minute, I think, for them this year, which is quite impressive in that way. But really, I think probably it's the defence that has caught the eye a bit in terms of the wing back. It's a wing back system 3-4-3. So you got like Kongsgård and Melgalvis have have done quite well. They've been unfortunate. They've had the season-ending injury to Julian Dunn at the back, and Morten Bjørlo, midfielder, who looked quite good in the first 2 games. He's been ruled out with a broken foot. Not sure when he's due back. I think he'd probably end of July, maybe even early. I don't know. Those things can be difficult to heal, but for the most part, I actually struggle to work HamKam out a bit, Jonathan. They're a weird team. They draw a lot of games, which is not. This is not a draw league in general. There's only 2 teams in the whole Eliteserien really that are drawing many matches. It's Tromsø and HamKam. The rest of the teams generally it's a low percentage of draws. Teams like to sort of push for the win, but I think with HamKam they have been happy to settle for a point on a few occasions. And or maybe it's just the way the games have worked out. They've ended up with draws. I struggle to get a grip on them, to be honest. It can be hard with newly promoted teams, and to say from a betting perspective, I tend to avoid them in terms of match result.
Let's move on. Christensen, 0, Bodø/Glimt 2. Pellegrino got 2 goals in this one. Steve, how has Bodø/Glimt sort of recovered from their slump, shall we say? I know it's only been 1 game, to be fair. Obviously losing to Viking and also losing to Molde. How do you sort of assess where they are at the moment? Has there been any changes of late? What do they do to pick up that win and get back to winning ways? Do you feel more optimistic about them after this result, or is it sort of a case of a poor side against one of the better sides?
I'm optimistic about them, yeah, and this was the perfect time for a break for them. I think they went on a bit of a training camp to Denmark whilst their pitch had been relayed up their new artificial surface. And yeah, you've got to beat sides like Christiansen right now. But they look controlled in the game. They were the better side, deserved it. Christiansen had the moments. The goalkeeper, Kaikin, had an improved performance. I think he's been one of the weaker links for Glimt this year, but he definitely was better in this fixture as well. Glimt could have scored more goals because the Christiansen goalkeeper also had a good game. They've actually replaced Sean McDermott. He's been dropped to the bench for the last 2 matches. Sergin Mbai has got the gloves now, Jonathan. That's how bad things are there. But he had a good game, actually, at Mbai, in fairness. So it could have been more goals for Glimt. This is a big period for them now. They've got a good run of games. They've got Ålesund, Odd, Sarpsborg, HamKam, Jerv, Ålesund, Odd again. It's a good run of fixtures. And they've got, mixed in with that, they've got Champions League qualification. They've drawn Klaksvik from, is that Faroe Islands? Yeah, I mean, they're going to easily beat them, aren't they, over 2 legs. They can probably rest players for the second leg. And then after that, then they've got to work out how to sort of mix the really important European qualification matches in sort of August. That's the crucial stage. But the good thing is their fixtures are pretty easy in August. Like they've got to face Jerv again in around that period. I think they could go on a really good run of games in Eliteserien, winning something like, say, 8 of their next 10. And that will get them probably back into the title race. And they had a nice little reset here. It did them the world of good.
That's great to hear. And obviously, yeah, sometimes a little camp away can always help, isn't it, in a break? Maybe they probably might have needed that. And who knows where they go from here. The next games are Ålesund at home, Odd away, and Sarpsborg at home. So this is, and then after that they've got HamKam and Jerv. So to be honest, this is a pretty nice run for them to just get back on the horse, so to speak. Steve, I'm going to move on. I'm going to ask you about Rosenborg because they've had a little bit of a slump again in terms of results, and they're currently 8th. Now I know in pre-season you were quite optimistic about their potential this season. Not really, doesn't really look like it's working out for them at the moment, does it? I mean, after battering Vålerenga 4-0 in their game just at the end of May, they've now lost sort of 3-1 at Lillestrøm. And a follow-up question on that, obviously Vecchia gave Rosenborg the lead, but Lillestrøm came back, 3 goals. Ifeanyi Matthew, Dragsnes, and Magnus Knudsen. I mean, we've talked about Lillestrøm as being title contenders. Is this the result that sort of solidifies the fact that they genuinely are title candidates? But let's first get your thoughts on the Rosenborg.
Yeah, I'm still optimistic about Rosenborg, Jonathan. They've only lost 2 games of football. They've got a light squad. That's what I don't like about them. And they need to, I think, add more depth this summer window. But their strongest 11 is quite decent. Like I say, they're fairly hard to beat. They could do with turning a few of their draws into wins. But I still think with no European football, they can take advantage of some of them teams above them. And I think I have them in second place this year. That probably is pushing it too far now, but they should be able to get themselves back into the top 4 or 5, really. And like I say, I'm still fairly optimistic about them.
Great stuff. And what are your thoughts on Lillestrøm there? This is the second part of the question.
I mean, you got to consider them for real, but I've got the feeling soon that they will realise where they are in the table. You kind of get this in all sports, don't you, where everything's kind of going on really well, they're doing better than expected, and then the realisation hits the players. Hold on, we're top of the table, we're unbeaten. They are due a defeat. Just the way football goes, isn't it? You can't stay unbeaten for that long, really. Even the best sides come unstuck somewhere. But this was no doubt another mental boost. They've been great at home this year. You know, Rosenborg might not be the power they once were, but they're still a big name in Norwegian football, and they came from behind here. That was the first goal they conceded at home all season. It was quite a good finish from Vetcher, actually. You weren't saving that. But the goalkeeper keeps impressing me, Mads Christiansen. Came with a huge save at 2-1 up. I think 2 big saves when he was 2-1 up. Then they were 2-1 up, actually. He has made a massive difference in between the sticks for them. And this lad is definitely worth his weight in gold. And when you've got someone that last line of defence who's making these sort of saves, the points can add up. I don't think they'll win the league. And I think they will eventually have a bad period. It's just a question of when. And, you know, I think even this weekend might be a bit of a test. I think they got that away. It's not easy. Got to take them seriously, but you know, again, they've had a lot of good squad conditions, no injuries, no suspensions, things like that. At some point, they will hit a bad run, and that is going to be the real test.
It's always the way, isn't it? When you get, you know, a team kind of maybe they get to a certain point in the season, and then they're like, wait a minute, we actually could win this. I remember when Leicester had it when they won the league, wasn't it, in 2016? And you know, that was the point where you start to. I think they beat Manchester City away, and that was when you really start to think that, you know, these guys are for real. But yeah, I think, like you said, it's 11 games in, isn't it? It's still quite early days, really. But it looks like, you know, with results like that, they could be here to stay. Who knows? We haven't got too many more talking points in this episode. We're going to have a bit of a shorter episode. But do want to move on, just sort of briefly talk about Molde. Molde getting a 2-1 win at Odd. Your man, Fofana, actually got on the score sheet in this one. So, you know, Molde always seem to be there, don't they? They always sort of ticking along, sort of in the, you know, challenging for the title, not too far away from it at any point, really. Just give us your assessment on Molde, because they are sort of, they're conceding goals, you know, 1 per game. They've conceded 11 in 11 games, but they're scoring 20, they've scored 22, so obviously they're averaging 2 per game. So do you think that they are the most realistic, maybe, title winners at this stage?
Yes, if I had to pick a team to win the title right now, I'd say them. Because they have got that. I still look at Bodø/Glimt as the team to beat. Really, I still think Glimt will finish in the top 3 eventually, unless the squad blows up or something. But Molde, they've got this hunger, desire, determination this season. They're finding ways to win games of football, Jonathan. That's the side of a championship winning side, isn't it? They, I'm not saying they've fluked or got lucky with results, but they've been on the right side of quite a few 2-1 results, for example, which could have gone either way with a goal conceded at the wrong time or something. I like what I see from them. I think the squad is in good harmony. But again, they've got European football coming soon, qualifiers, and they want to make the group stage of the Conference League, won't they? So another test for them, for that squad coming up, a real test for Lillestrøm squad coming up, and, of course, the Bodø/Glimt squad too. So, yes, I like what Molde are doing at the moment. They've got plenty of offensive firepower. Datro Fofana, I think, has scored now in his last 3 straight games. He had a spell out injured for a bit, and to be honest, I'd kind of gone off him. I just felt it wasn't going to be his time at Molde. I maybe wrote him off a bit too early, though, because he scored a really crucial goal against Sarpsborg, a great header against Glimt, and a nice little tap-in against Odd. He shows he's getting in the right positions now. So they're moving in the right direction. If he can start scoring regularly, then, yeah, they've got the striker they need as well.
Yeah, I mean, the first goal was it was an unfortunate own goal, actually. Owusu Fofana, as you mentioned there, sort of a nice sort of poacher's goal, really, wasn't it? Getting on the end of a cross. And then Lauritsen scored as well. But, yeah, it looks like Molde are sort of ticking along fairly nicely there. I think if you look at the data as well, in terms of the team rankings, according to our partners, Y Scout, who we have a partnership with, of course, they're third at the moment for expected goals. So they're not killing it in terms of expected goals, but in terms of expected goals against as well, they're not doing too, they're not trending as that well. Actually, Tromsø are the best team in the league for expected goals against, which is an interesting one. And Jerv, the worst team in the league for expected goals against, 22.09 expected to concede. And in terms of the XG for the league, Viking are actually top, 25.64 XG against 22 scored. And Sandefjord at the bottom, 10.14 XG with 14 scored. So gives you a bit of insight. And again, back on Jerv, 5 goals this season, is that right? I think that's
5 scored, yeah.
Crazy low amount of goals scored, but their XG is actually 10, so 10.61. So someone somewhere is missing some chances. And it's the same with Christiansen. Their XG is actually 11.64 with 5 scored. So someone somewhere is missing some chances for those two teams. Maybe it'll even out as the campaign goes on. But I think that pretty much wraps up.
I think we probably better talk about the shock result of the round, Jonathan, before we do head off. That was in Viking against Sandefjord. One of the biggest price outright winners I can remember in Eliteserien in recent years, because Sandefjord were 12-1 with the bookmakers to win this game outright, which 12-1 might not sound huge, but for footballing odds, it is huge, certainly for Eliteserien terms. And they just went here to Viking and really they fell behind actually, and playing with shock 3 points. I don't think many people saw this one coming.
Definitely not.
No, and one thing, I'll just make a few comments about this game, and I actually feel like too many teams are actually not underestimating Sandefjord, but they're not respecting them. Sandefjord are a good counter-attacking side. They're not a good team overall. I don't rate them at all. You mentioned they're the lowest team in terms of XG, but it might be a case where the metrics are a little bit skew-whiff in terms of their main game plan is counter-attack at pace, getting players in position, and sometimes they might sort of get a player might just miss out on the ball by a whisker when he's clean through, things like that. But the high lines that some teams are playing against Sandefjord, especially when they're at home against them, it's getting a bit stupid. I've seen Godsake got caught out by this early in the season. They lost 5-0 at home to them. And I think Viking got caught out here. This match, Sandefjord created, I would say, good moments on the break. And in terms of chances, they took them well. So whilst they're not a good team, I think teams need to start respecting their strengths a bit more. And some have, but Viking here played a bit of a naive game plan. I think they went into this game thinking we're going to batter them quite easily. That's what most people thought. They took a 1-0 lead. I'm not saying they took their foot off the gas a bit, but they got a bit sloppy with their own finishing, thinking just a matter of time before we get the second goal and seal the game. And before you know it, they're falling behind. So poor game management from them, poor tactical approach, and Sandefjord, whilst I don't think they're a great side, they are absolutely, once again, for the second season in a row, the joint managers, they're getting the most out of this squad.
Yeah, that's great stuff. And of course, goals from Lockberg, Ofkir, and Ruud Tveter, who is a bit of a poacher, isn't he, at times? He's someone who kind of can get the odd goal. And, his goal kind of wasn't bad, actually. There's a lot of good work in the build-up, and then he kind of shot home from just the edge of the box, left-footed. Very much a kind of a striker's goal, really, wasn't it? I think he's played in Sweden as well for Halmstad at one point. But just in terms of that, you mentioned such a shocking result, especially as you say in a kind of essentially a three-way race, isn't it? Really, in terms of the bet. Just want to read out some of the top scorers because it does relate to what we're going to talk about in the second part. We're going to probably change hands in a little bit, aren't we, Stephen? You're going to take. Just the top scorers in the league, because Ruud Tveter is one of them. He's got 5 goals. He's joint with Guillermo Molins and Tobias Heinz. Excuse me. Tobias Heinz, Guillermo Molins, and Ruud Tveter. All of them have played in Sweden, by the way, 5 goals. They're joint 7th. Then you've got on 6 goals, you've got Sigurd Haugen, Johan Hove, who we've talked about, and I think you've sort of spoken about in some detail. Aliuan Ndor of Haugesund, Amal Pellegrino, and Stefano Vecchio, of course, of Rosenborg, formerly of Sirius. But the outright leading goal scorer in the league at the moment is Veton Berisha of Viking with eight goals. And he wasn't on the score sheet in this game, Steve, but there are some rumours linking him with a move to Sweden. I don't know if we're going to change hands now, but I just wanted
we might as well now.
How you think he's doing, because this is probably a nice segue into the next section. But basically, there's a lot of reports coming out of Sweden at the moment. Veton Berisha is a leading target for Malmo, who are looking to strengthen in this summer window. Now, I think we did talk about Berisha a little bit in the last episode as well, the last but one, obviously not the Danish episode. But does it surprise you that he's getting linked to sort of teams like Malmo, Steve? And do you think he could do a potential job in Sweden for Malmo?
Not really surprised, because I think when we often get asked the question, don't we, that who's the best striker in the elite area? And Berisha inevitably would be in most people's top 3 list right now. Now, it doesn't mean he's an amazing striker or anything like that. It just shows you the kind of the crop that's around in terms of genuine frontmen in the elite area right now. So, but he's quality, he's a good finisher, and he's probably getting at the stage of his career now where he's thinking, I want to win trophies. I want to really compete up there. I mean, how old is he? He's 28, I think. And that's pretty much peak time, isn't it, for striker? And he's got to think, where do I want to be? And Viking, it looked like they were going to make a run at the title this year. They're not going to be getting a medal if they can't beat Sandefjord at home, and they've dropped a lot of the points as well. If they lost him, they might not even finish in the top 6, Jonathan. He would be a huge loss for them, no matter how much money they got for him. No doubt Malmo would probably fleece them. They got fleeced by Joe Bell, the Joe Bell deal to Brøndby back in the winter. So, but yeah, in terms of Malmo, I think he would suit Malmo nicely. I think he would do very well in Allsvenskan. Put him in the right system. He's a physical striker, determined, strong leader, and he's got all the attributes required to do well, certainly in the top end of Scandinavian football. And, I think he could probably do somewhat of a good job in certain parts of Europe as well. Maybe not like top level leagues, but very good striker who knows how to find the back of the net. Yeah,
and I wonder if it's sort of like a bit of a Cholak type replacement. It seems to have maybe a slightly similar profile.
Yes.
In that sense, and kind of, the sort of man leading from the front, and looks like he could maybe do a decent job looking at some of his goals. But 28-year-old, as he mentioned, watch this space. The other interesting point, I'm actually going to on air read out a tweet that's just come up on our timeline as we transition from part 1 to part 2, because I think this is very interesting and we debate it a lot. Marty Cifuentes, of course, the Hammarby manager, has just tweeted replying to a question. I think someone who asked him, as someone who's experience of managing in Norway, Sweden, and Denmark, what do you see as the main differences between the 3 leagues? Cifuentes has just replied. He said, difficult to answer in few characters, but he says, Norway, many teams play 4-3-3. Glimt, the best Scandinavian team I've seen in my 5 years here. Denmark, very physical games, high press, good players and stadiums. And he says Sweden, big variety on tactics, and the atmosphere in the stadium is top with a star emoji. So clearly loves the atmosphere in Sweden. And I think that's an interesting, because we talk about it quite a lot, don't we, Steve? Especially with some Danish content recently as well. What the difference is as someone who's managed in all 3 countries. That's quite interesting. But yeah, let's move over to Sweden now, I guess, unless there's any other business.
I think that is good from Marty Cifuentes there. I don't think you could argue that Sweden doesn't have the best overall atmospheres. I mean, you've got in Denmark, Parken, obviously, and, Brøndby as well bring deep. But in terms of the whole league, you've got, several strongly supported clubs, haven't you, in Sweden? Across the whole country, and so I could certainly agree with that. Interesting that he said there's a lot more tactical variation in Sweden. I'm not sure what you make of that comment, but I think he's nailed that answer, hasn't he? It's
I think he it's an interesting one. I thought it would be worthwhile tweet now. I think his handle is at MCC14, I believe. So if you want to follow him, but definitely in terms of Sweden, I think that's something a point that Ian Birchnell made as well, that the tactical differences in Sweden, you come up a lot of different tactical setups and shapes, and I would definitely agree with that. I think it's been a change that sort of maybe happened a lot more maybe since Graham Potter era, maybe in the last sort of 5 years, and teams like Ostersunds and others who can vary how they play. But yeah, I think you do. There was a time where Sweden sometimes was a bit of a 4-4-2, and a bit rigid. But no, definitely, I think you get a lot of tactical differences. And it's interesting that he says that Denmark's such a high pressing league as well, and an emphasis on physicality. So that is quite interesting to hear.
Yes.
We're going to change hands now. You're going to take over.
I am. Sweden then. So,
Boy.
I mean, what have you been doing with yourself, Jonathan, aside from your non-league speciality scouting and things like that? But in terms of Allsvenskan, I can't remember the last time an Allsvenskan match got played. It was quite a long time ago, wasn't it? So looking back now, 29th of May, in fact. But it is returning this coming weekend with a full run of fixtures. But really, the main talking points, as always in Sweden, is the transfer season business, isn't it? And we've lost players, sadly. Just scanning down this itinerary here, someone's gone to Belgium, surprise, surprise. But has it been the sort of that silly season where there's been both dealings and loads of rumours and things going on like that? And I mean, it's kind of a bit crazy. Why have they had such a long break here? Do you know, Jonathan?
I mean, there's been the international break, of course. I mean, it's the same. The last round in the Elite was the same week, wasn't it? 29th of May.
Yeah.
Just come back, obviously, the week just gone. I guess Sweden's had a bit of a longer break. I'm not entirely sure why. There've been like friendly games and stuff taking place, training matches to prepare them, obviously, to get back into the swing of things this coming weekend. But yeah, it's been a long break. It's not something I'm a fan of. I think summer football in Scandinavia is a precious thing. And I think you should try and get as many games as you can while you can, because obviously in the winter it gets extremely chilly. And I'd like to think you want to get most of your games out of the way in the summer if you can. But yeah, the transfer season is kind of upon us. And in Sweden, it's usually a bit of a turning point in the calendar, really, because it's usually the time of day when some teams get their best players poached and others can strengthen. And it tends to kind of alter the course of the title. And I think it's got the potential to do it again this season. If you look at the current table, obviously we've got Beko Häcken atop, which is incredible, really. And they've got a game in hand as well on AIK, who are at second. They're both level on points on 23 points. You've got Hammarby, obviously, a third on 20 points as well. And then you've got sort of Djurgården and Malmo, fourth and fifth on 18 points. So I think when you look at the transfer season, Malmo are expected to be very active. They're trying to get some deals done. To strengthen with the money that they have, of course, from the Champions League revenue of last season, and of course teams like Häcken are probably tending to want to try and hold on to their players and see if they can, carry on that title fight, because it's so early, isn't it? Only 10 games played. You're not really even halfway through the season, anywhere near it. So it's too early. When you're losing players at this stage of the season, it's almost like there's only a third of the season gone. So you're not really even settled into your rhythm. Don't really know what the way around that is, but yeah, it always causes consternation. And if you look at the case of Hammarby, who are third at the moment, looking really good this season, having a really good year, they are in that position. They've got the joint best defensive record in the league, but they've now lost two players. Michael Lado has gone to AZ Alkmaar, someone we talked about on a podcast recently. I said keep an eye out for him on the last show when we talked about Swedberg. And I said Michael Lado is another one who's kind of going to potentially move on. He's kind of like a pacey wide man, very quick, covers ground well. I think he's got good technical profile. Didn't really play. He's not like a huge, starter for Hammarby in this season. Really, he's had a lot of cameos and games where he's not exactly played 90 minutes. But it's such a young player. You can see the raw attributes are there, and obviously AZ Alkmaar have taken that punt. And the other big move, of course, is Williot Swedberg, who's we dedicated a portion of the show to him last week. Well, whenever the last show was, of course, not last week, but it was nearly a month ago now, wasn't it? But we dedicated a good portion of the show to him and his progress, the teenager, and how well he's doing. And he's now left to Celta Vigo. I think I mentioned negotiations were ongoing with Celta Vigo at the time. It came out, in fact, that Luis Campos, I believe, who works for PSG. I think he's just been hired by PSG. He is working as an advisor for Celta Vigo as a consultant, I believe. And he actually is the man who was behind Swedberg's transfer. So I think maybe he recommended them to Celta Vigo, which has helped get it wrapped up. They announced it with a very nice sort of IKEA unveiling on their Twitter account. The Spanish club, they're paying about 5 million euros, 53 million krona, which is a huge deal for Hammarby financially. That's a huge injection of cash. But ultimately, Steve, I think it's probably worth it. I think they've got a good player there. He did go and talk to Belgian clubs as well. I think he went and met a couple in Belgium. But he's opted for Sweden. He's lived in Spain in the past and he speaks fluent Spanish. So a 5-year deal for Celta Vigo. I think they've got a decent player there. I think they've got someone who can kick on and do well in Spain.
That's interesting. I was actually going to say this is kind of a bit of a weird destination for him to end up at. Celta de Vigo, the epitome of mid-table in La Liga, actually had a 0 goal difference last year, 46 points. But if he speaks fluent Spanish, then it kind of makes sense. But a Swede on the north coast of Spain, very interesting place to go. And how do you see him going in La Liga? Because, I mean, he's not going to be going to a club and they're not going to... He's going to be starting games, isn't he, surely? Or getting plenty of minutes straight away at a club like Celta de Vigo.
I think he's got the ability to maybe get some minutes. Still very young. I think he's still got a lot to learn. But I think he's got the technical profile to sort of stand out in Sweden. If I think of someone who's in Sweden who's in Spain who played in Sweden, Alexander Isak. Of course, I wrote a Wisecout blog about him during the Euros last year, and he obviously played for OIK, and they're sort of similar in terms of frame. They're very wiry, sort of tall players, if that makes sense. Obviously, Isak went to Dortmund and went around the block before he ended up in Spain, but at Real Sociedad. But Swedberg's kind of got a similar, I think, physical profile at that kind of age, similar to how Isak was when he was about that sort of age, 18, 19. I think he'll need bulking up. I think I could imagine him maybe not bulking up, but I think he'll have to. It's probably it's a very technical league, Spain, but I think he'll also need to maybe adapt to the level of in terms of the pace and the intensity that they play at, the passing game in Spain. I could see him maybe going out on a loan. I'm not sure I don't know too much about Celta Vigo's squad at the moment. I'll be honest, but I could maybe see him doing a pre-season and then and either being on the fringes or maybe going out on loan. But I think. They only have to look at the fact that Manchester City were looking at him at the Swedish Cup final and other big clubs like that, Barcelona, to realise that this is a genuine talent. And I think it's a great move for Celta Vigo. I think they've got this as a good player at a reasonable cost. And of course, if he does well, they could probably sell him on for 3-4 times that. So probably a good move for all parties. I think Hammarby have been paid well. He would have gone to Lokomotiv Moscow, as I said many times this season. The deal was done. But eventually, obviously, the situation in Russia meant that he couldn't move there. The deal got cancelled in January. So their loss is kind of Celta Vigo's gain, I think. And funnily enough, I think one of the directors at Celta Vigo is actually friends with Martí Cifuentes, who he's a Spanish coach as well, and he's managed him at Hammarby. So maybe he had a word. Juan Carlos Calero, I think he said, is someone that. There was a little joke I read on a website, AS, Spanish daily newspaper. He said that Cifuentes was angry with Calero for signing him, but he said, it's no problem, I'll bring him to dinner when we next meet. So clearly he's happy with the deal, and I think all around everyone's probably happy with the deal. So yeah, it's goodbye to Williot Swedberg for us. Who knows if we see him again on loan in the next year or two or whatever. It depends how he adapts, but I hope he goes on and has a good career because you can see in his technical ability, he's a very good, intricate ball player. When he's in that final third, he chooses the right options. He can shoot, he can pass, he can score off both feet. I think he's really got a bright future, to be fair. So I'm happy to see someone move into La Liga, to be fair, rather than the kind of usual pathways out of Sweden. So good luck to him.
Yeah, this feels different, like you never would have had me thinking Celta Vigo. And if he's going on loan somewhere, let's hope it's somewhere like Las Palmas or Tenerife rather than back to Scandinavia. Let's keep him down there and developing his football because he does seem like a great talent. Now, there's been some other transfers as well. Belgium here have come calling to Abdul Razak. What's that? Tell us more about that deal.
Yeah, that's the other big transfer. The Norrköping player, Abdul Razak. He is a player. I think he was in my 10 to watch, I believe. I'm not entirely sure. I'm going to have to double check that. if he wasn't in it this year, I'm pretty sure he was in it last year. But yeah, he's a player that I like. And obviously Swedberg was in my 10 to watch as well on Patreon, patreon.com/Nordic Football Podcast. No, he wasn't in my 10 to watch this year, actually. Abdulrazak, he was in it the year before. But he is a player that I'm not surprised he's moved, to be honest. He's kind of, I think, 19, 20-year-old. He was once dubbed the new John Obi Mikel after impressing for Nigeria's under-17 team. And he went on trial at Norrköping and they signed him. He was described at the time, I think, by Jens Gustafsson as a player who works very hard. He's played in a lot of different positions, actually, Steve. He's played defensive midfield. He's played centre mid. He's also played kind of in the forward areas, at times. Bit of a kind of, he's a bit of a kind of handyman. He can do a bit of all jobs. But for someone so young, I think he's really shown potential. I think this year, I remember there was a game, I think Norrköping played, the last game before the international break. He put in a lovely cross for an assist, and it just showed his technical ability as well when he gets the chance to go forward at times. And yeah, I think it's no surprise, obviously, he's gone to Anderlecht. Usually it's kind of Bruges, isn't it, against teams like that. So to be fair, kind of when such a historic team like Anderlecht come in, that's interesting. There has been a lot of rumours that he'd be moving for some time. He has been kind of linked for a while. He's been at Norrköping since 2020. He's 20 years old now. Sorry, not 19, but yeah, he says, I will always remember Norrköping. I'll carry it with me forever. I started my professional career here, and it's been a privilege to wear the white and blue shirt. I'm a player that I am today because of Norrköping, and everyone's treated me like family. So, he's given a nice sort of tribute as he's left the club. Apparently, the deal is around £3 million, roughly 32 million Swedish krona for him. And I think there's some bonuses there. I think there's a 20% resale clause, things like that. So there's obviously got clauses on when they'll eventually, of course, look to sell him on. I think his physicality suits Belgium. I think so. I think he could go there. It's a bit like Alassane Youssouf, who left Gothenburg and went to, I think it was Antwerp, I believe, or Charleroi, I can't remember, or Standard Liège. One of them anyway, team in red. But that kind of midfield player who can kind of adapt and move to Belgium, got that physical profile. He's very tenacious. He gets on the ball. He can make tackles as well. He covers ground. 61 games, 7 assists, 2 goals for peaking. So good luck to him. I think he'll do well. So another team scouting in Sweden.
Oscar Williamson, and he was linked with Slavia Prague. I don't know if they're the side that is still in for him, Jonathan, for the youngster from IFK Gothenburg. It looks like they're going to lose another of their academy talents. Yeah,
and it's always one where, again, he was in my 10 to watch last year. I don't know if these teams are paying on our Patreon, Steve, but we might have to sort that out. But if they are, then they'll be getting some juicy content and getting some good tips. But yeah, no. In terms of Wilhelmsen, like you mentioned, he has actually been given permission, I think, by EFK to go and train elsewhere. So he has trained, I believe, with a club abroad or gone to meet them. And you're right. There's a strong link with move to Czechia. Is it Czechia? Czech Republic? Czechia. So
Slavia Prague.
Yeah. There's a big rumor there on that one. I think they will sell him. They've even talked about a potential replacement for their academy. You know what EFK Göteborg would like? They've got a kind of a conveyor belt, almost a pipeline. A player called Linus Karlstrand, who they've already said could be a replacement, 17-year-old. But yeah, in terms of Wilhelmsen, he was once described as the next Erling Haaland, to be honest, by when he was breaking through at EFK. He made his debut very young for the club. I think he was even, I think I'm right in saying, he was one of the youngest ever appearance makers, I believe. In fact, he's the club's youngest goal scorer of all time. He scored in a cup game in 2019 at the age of 15. So that's crazy. Obviously, Dortmund did approach him, but he didn't want to go and join their youth team. He was also linked with Premier League clubs when he was younger. Simon Tern praised him and said he's got a sledgehammer shot. And I think there's always been this sense that he will eventually leave, but it's not done yet. That he went and trained. But he was back. Mika Stara said there's nothing really to comment on, but it's not unthinkable that he might leave and any player could leave. He said that we've had a good dialogue with his advisors, and obviously he's already started talking about his replacement, Karlstrand. He's already been sort of bigging him up. So I guess from their point of view, maybe they're thinking, they've got someone else in the pipeline. I think Wilhelmsen, I think he's only scored 2 goals this season so far. He's not really been incredible, I don't think. He's shown glimpses. Physically, he's quite a tall, kind of leggy striker who has a good, decent shot on him. He's not made, I would say, Steve, the impact that Benjamin Negron made, for example, when he broke through. It's not made an immediate impact, but I think he has shown with some of the goals he scored playing up front alongside Marcus Berg, of course, who he can learn so much from. I think he's sort of shown the ability to go on. So I'm a little bit surprised that a club like Prague is coming in for him now, based on his performances, but based on his potential, you can understand why. And just obviously, there's a few other teams interested. Vitesse and Groningen, apparently, they're the other 2 teams linked. And the other just rumour that's sort of doing the rounds at the moment as well, which is quite a big one potentially for Oikor. Bilal Hussein is apparently being chased by Bologna in Italy. So, that's another player who's got a real high potential, I think. And he's another one in our 10 to watch, isn't he, on patreon.com/Nordic Football Podcast. And clearly he's got a bright future. So it's nothing done there, but that's just the rumours going around. And just finally, Steve, on the kind of transfer front, one other thing I wanted to mention. You might be sad to hear this. I know you've had your criticism for him in the past, but it's apparent that Malmo are not going to offer a new contract to Joe Inge Berget, apparently. There's a lot of rumours around Malmo at the moment and who wants to leave, who's going to stay. So, I think Malmo are really looking to be active, but they haven't really made any big splashes yet. But it looks like Joe Inge Berget is going to be one of the many players that they might look to move on.
Wise decision. Replace Joe Inge Berget with Veton Berisha. That would be a definite upgrade, in my opinion. So, but one more thing before you go here, Jonathan. There has been a question live on air from Varsen at Oscar Holt 1991. And he's just wondering your opinion here. Tips of what player Kalmar could bring in this transfer window. What type of players do they need?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and they have actually already been. I think they've already made a couple of deals. They've already been a little bit active in this window, bringing back an old player of theirs. I think I'm right in saying. So it's great question from Wasson. Great to hear from you. Change his profile picture, eh?
I like it. It looks really sleek, doesn't it?
Yeah. But they've signed a player called Ronnie Janssen. He's joined the club. He's a Finnish player. And they've also signed Papa Diouf. Now, he's obviously, anyone who might remember him, he played for the club in the past. And as a striker who kind of was quite popular. I do think they did need a striker. And by the way, there's also rumours that Isaac Janssen, who I did mention that I didn't think he's good enough maybe to be in a title-winning team, but there's actually a lot of rumours linking him to Malmo at the moment. So, I think he's got room for development, Janssen. He's quite an exciting player. But there's been rumours that he might be on the way out at Kalmar. But it's Pap Diouf I like. I remember him. I'm not entirely sure where he's been, to be fair. I'll have to double check that, as you've just asked me off the cuff. But I do remember him when he was kind of around the club, and he was always, I'd say, quite a popular figure. So he returns. In terms of what they need, I think they could maybe strengthen the midfield a little bit. I'm not. I know Douglas Bergqvist has also left in defence, so they could maybe do a bit of work there. But I think they've been performing fairly well. So difficult to answer, really. But Pap Diouf will be back for the rest of the season. He said, "The love I've received in this city since day one means so much to me, and it's absolutely fantastic to be back home again." So it's a short-term deal. The sporting director said, "We know that he will give his all for the club." And obviously, just that forward line, he offers a bit more options, a bit of pace, maybe a bit of physicality, because they are a little bit light in forward areas, actually. So I think that was maybe needed. So, yes, I hope that answers your question, Oscar.
Just going to move on to something a little bit random now. We really are scraping at the barrel this week. I'm going to be talking about the English Championship, Jonathan, here, although with a linked twist. And Blackburn Rovers recently appointed Jon Dahl Tomasson as their new head coach, ex-Malmo manager, of course. And, last season on the Nordic Football Podcast, we were kind of questioning him quite a lot. He didn't even make your top 3 coach of the year awards, despite winning the title. So I know you tweeted a couple of very nice things about him last week, which surprised me a little bit. I don't know whether you were wanting to appease some Blackburn Rovers fans, or maybe it was just judging it over a 2-year period. But for any Blackburn Rovers fans who are listening, what is Jon Dahl Tomasson going to bring to Blackburn Rovers and the English Championship? Is this a good appointment for the club?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I did see a tweet, Stephen. I did not reply to it, and thought to myself, you know what, I'm going to save that reply for a future episode, because I did see your comment there. I wasn't sure if you'd actually had to go back and look through the archives or listen to the end of season review again to get the coach of the season, because I'd completely forgotten that he wasn't in my top 3. I don't know or if it was just from memory, maybe there. But I checked back through it, and obviously I had Torstensson third, I had Henrik Rydström second, and Bartosz Grzelak first. Actually, I don't.
Did you check back? I checked back as well, because I remembered it specifically that it was a bit of a shock that he wasn't in the top 3. But
yeah, we did discuss that on the end of season show. So go back if you want to listen to it. But yeah, maybe in hindsight, it was a bit harsh. Rydström I've written about on Wyscout. He kind of revolutionized Kalmar. He was incredible. I thought just for a single season transformation of a football club, needed some praise. Grzelak I thought had a really good season, and to get them so close to the title, obviously, I think he deserved merit. And Torstensson, of course, nearly broke the Swedish record for all-time consecutive clean sheets. So I just felt like with Malmo, you've sort of done me a bit of a kipper here. You've tried to sort of do me. And in fairness, he's not in the top 3, based on the fact that they won the league level on points, and I would have expected them to win it by a little bit more. They won it on goal difference, essentially, from AIK, and that was my reasoning. And it did, to be fair, it did kind of fizzle out a bit, his time at Malmo. And I think that ultimately balancing the Champions League with, group stages with obviously the Allsvenskan, I think it proved a little bit too much for Malmo to really deal with, and I think they struggled, and that was why they kind of limped over the line a bit. And also, Steve, it kind of fizzled out their relationship between Tomasson and the club, and it almost became an inevitability. There was a lot of talk that he might leave Malmo towards the end of the season. So I think the season just kind of petered out, and that influenced my thinking. But I will refer you to the season before that, where he was number 1 in my Coach of the Season awards, and rightly so. And in terms of what you said about maybe trying to appease Blackburn fans, no, I think I couldn't be further from the truth in that, to be honest. I stand by every word I said. I think he did a fantastic job at Malmo. The team, when he joined it, they had gone many years without a title under Uwe Rosler. They were struggling. The Stockholm teams were starting to dominate again. And this is Malmo, who have, one of the biggest budgets if not the biggest budget in the league, failing to sort of win a title. And they'd gone a few years without it. He came in, Steve, and anyone listening, of course, and he immediately sort of, I liken it to sort of Eric Cantona. He kind of lifted the collar up of the shirt of the club and said, we are Malmo, and this is going to change. And I really liked his mentality. Not only on the pitch, he I wrote a Wyscout blog, which I think has been taken down now, which I was a bit upset about. But it kind of delved into his tactical setup and how he created that first title-winning team. But in terms of the mentality, I think that's the area that I really think he got an edge. And the best example of that was when they knocked Rangers out of the Champions League, when they went to Ibrox and won and knocked them out against all odds. It was widely expected Rangers would go through. And I remember his press conference afterwards, and he was like, "This is Malmo." He really built like a feeling of like, we're a massive club here, and he brought back that feeling of like superiority that Malmo kind of had missed. Obviously, he won back-to-back league titles. As I say, it did end a little bit stale in the way that they limped over the line. But you've got to remember, Steve, this was the first time Malmo had been in the Champions League group stages for many years as well. And they had Juventus, Chelsea, Zenit. So the traveling, all that kind of did impact them, but they still won the title. So, yeah, I think Blackburn fans, I've already seen some of his early press conferences, and he's already talking about kind of getting that connection with the fans and sort of bringing back the old days. And I think his skill, Steve, might not be necessarily as a coach. I think he's good on the pitch. I think he's a good coach. He blended a kind of Dutch style because obviously he was an assistant manager in Denmark and also in the Netherlands. And he brings that kind of technical style of the sort of a Dutch team, but he also blended it with that physicality. They became really good at set pieces, Malmo, throw-ins, long throws. So I think he'll bring that physicality to Blackburn, maybe that blend. But I think the edge that he gives as a manager is, like, I think mentality-wise, this is a manager who managed at like AC. Obviously he played for AC Milan. He played for big clubs. You can include Newcastle in that, of course. Depends if you want to include them or not. But he's won titles in his career as a player. He was a big player in his day, and he's got that kind of elite mentality. I think he'll bring that to Blackburn, and he'll bring that kind of. I don't know how they'll do on the pitch and in terms of transfers and stuff like that off the pitch, but I think he'll bring a feeling of, like, he'll start to bring that feeling of Blackburn, like, we are a Premier League club and we need to be back in the Premier League. I think he'll bring that kind of winning mentality, and that's what he brought at Malmo. That I really I was really impressed by it, to be honest. I like managers like that, and he talked the talk, and he did walk the walk as well. I think that was the edge that he brought to Malmo, and I think that's the edge he'll bring to Blackburn. He will go into the season thinking that they can get promoted as champions, and I think that will galvanise the club. So I'm excited to see how it does, and I think it's one to watch. I'm not saying Blackburn are going to be amazing. A lot will depend on how they do. As a coach, I still think he can maybe improve a bit. It went a little bit stale, like I say, in the last season. But maybe that was also because of the squad size, and they lacked a bit of pace, I think, Malmo last season in that squad. I don't think they had the kind of physicality to deal with the two fronts. But I think Blackburn fans can be quietly optimistic about Tomasson. I think he's a decent manager, and I think it's probably a good move for him.
I would actually be surprised if he lasts the season. I don't like, generally, the Championship is a 46-game season. Foreign managers, and loads of clubs have done this, foreign managers in general, unless there are exceptions, just struggle in English football second tier unless you've got experience of the league before, or you are. I mean, I've seen many good managers come to the Championship and really struggle to adapt to it, and he's got a big job on his hands. It's the company at Burnley. I hate that appointment as well. That's a terrible appointment. I think both could be out of a job before the end of the season, seriously. And I would say even before Christmas, but then I remember there's a massive break before Christmas. But I think he's got I'm not saying he's a bad manager by any means, but it's just such a tough league to manage in, Jonathan. So if he can get Burnley up, then I will be very, very impressed with Jon Dahl Tomasson. I think I think managing any club in the Championship is really tough, actually. So good luck to him. I think it's a really, really difficult ask for him. He's going from a 30-game season to a league where you play like twice a week for a whole month in a row. Sometimes it's ridiculous. So
the Meat Man Soccer negativity is back for another week.
Well, let's see. I honestly think he's.
You said that, to be fair.
I think he's prime to be sacked before the end of the season. Yeah,
I think that's. To be honest, I think we're going to have to disagree on that one because I just add that he has actually played in England before, so he knows.
It does help in that way. Yeah, it does.
If you look at maybe Poyet Bargi, who was at Barnsley, that kind of ended pear-shaped, didn't it? But Tomasson's been around the block. He's not an inexperienced manager by any means in terms of what he's seen as a player, and also, I mean, he's managed at a high level in Sweden with the sort of the biggest club, you could argue, in terms of expectations, and also he's managed abroad in sort of a high level. So I do see what you mean. It's a big jump in terms of schedule, but also you got to bear in mind that when he came to Malmo, it was a COVID season. They had a lot of issues off the pitch in that sense. Having to deal with all the testing and the no fans, and he adapted to that pretty well in his first year in Sweden. So I think we'll just have to agree to disagree on that one. But yeah, good luck to him, and we shall see what happens. But yeah, listen, Blackburn fans can come back maybe in 6 months and let us know.
I hope he does well. I quite like Blackburn as a club, I have to say. I mean, I remember them, as a Premier League team back in the day. So Tomasson, I've nothing against him either. I quite like him. So I hope he proves me wrong. I really do. But there's several that have failed. But maybe he's got something about him. So I can't believe this is an interesting little debate we've got going here, Jonathan, isn't it, about the English Championship of all things.
Well, I did sense a little bit. I did sense your snide remark on Twitter. I thought, what's Steve's agenda here? So,
well, I know what your agenda. I think I know what your agenda was. But
you fell off your fence, and it's good that you're not sitting on it again. I like it. Let's see what happens in 6 months. I mean, I could be wrong. Could be totally wrong. I'm not claiming to be correct, but I think in terms of character and personality, they've got a manager that can that can do a decent job. But obviously, of course, as you know, Steve, a lot of football is actually who you get on the pitch, isn't it?
To be honest, that is probably more important than tactics in the Championship. That is the positive of Jon Dahl Tomasson. And if man management and things, I've seen many foreign coaches come in with these great systems and all that, and it doesn't work in the Championship that easily. So, I think that's on that note, I think that's it for the episode, isn't it? Am I missing?
We do have one more thing to talk about. Conference League, the draw has been made, and I'll just run through it quickly before we wrap this show up. We do actually have a bit of a derby coming, Steve. Are you aware of that? It will be a derby. Molde will play Elfsborg.
Oh, yes.
So,
yes, of course.
First tie will be July 21st, I think, in Norway, and then obviously the return leg 28th of July. So I'll see you in a few weeks, my friend, for that derby. Come on, Elfsborg. And the other games involving our teams, obviously some of the draws missing because there's qualifiers to come. But I'll just run quickly through some of the ties. Lillestrøm will play the winners of Flora against SJK. So it's either Estonia or Finland, I believe they're going to be playing the winners of. Obviously, as I mentioned there, Molde against Elfsborg. If we include Danish teams as well, Viborg are playing Suduva I think they're based in Lithuania. We've also got, who else have we got? I'm just scrolling on this list. DIF, Djurgården will play Rijeka of Croatia. So that's an interesting tie for DIF. And AIK have got a game against Ukrainian side, Vorskla Poltava. First game at home in Stockholm, and second game, I don't know exactly where that will be played, to be honest, due to the situation in Ukraine. And then finally, one other tie, Viking will play Sparta Prague away. That's quite a big game. So they got them away first leg, and then second home leg, obviously, at home. But what do you make of some of those ties that you've seen there, Steve? Brøndby as well, by the way. They will play the winners of Pogoń Szczecin, I think I'm pronouncing it, of Poland, and KR of Iceland. So
I can't see Viking getting past Sparta Prague at all. And Sparta Prague have been in the quarterfinals in 2 of the last 3 years, haven't they? I think absolutely no chance there. I would expect Molde to beat Elfsborg. SJK, I think they're not. I thought they were managed by Simo Valakari, but they're not actually. They're managed by someone called Joaquim Gomez. So I just searched them up. It looks like AIK have got a favourable draw there. I would say it's disappointing. There's a couple of. I'd rather have Molde or Elfsborg a bit later on in the qualifying. I don't want to see teams get knocked out straight away in the first round. I mean, it's just awful, isn't it? We want a good run from as many of these teams as we can. It's quite fun, isn't it, when they go deep?
Yeah, it's a bit annoying, actually, to be fair. You would want one of the sort of, one of the ties, Steve, you got one of the qualifiers, you got Bruno's Magpies from Gibraltar against Crusaders of Northern Ireland. I've never even heard of them. And they play, AZ Alkmaar will play the winners of them. So, you would have liked a bit of an easier one, Who the hell are Bruno's Magpies? I've never heard of them. But listen, I guess in a way it'll be interesting to see. We have so many debates, don't we, about Sweden versus Norway, which league is better. So this will be another test. I think be a well-matched game. I'd probably have Molde as favourites, if I'm being honest. But I think Elfsborg could create a bit of an upset potentially. So I will be interested to watch that game. I think it will be
interesting actually. Yeah. I'd say in the Champions League, Bodø/Glimt got the team from the Faroe Islands, Klaksvik, I think they're called. So no disrespect, but that should be fairly simple over 2 legs for Bodø/Glimt. That was a good draw for them, considering last season they got knocked out at the same stage against a team from Poland. So their extra coefficient for reaching the quarterfinals has helped them out by getting them. I think they were a seeded team in this round. So it's good news for them. And best of luck to all the Scandinavian teams in Europe. Let's just get as many as we can into the group stages. We've been lucky the last sort of 4 or 5 years. There's been some candidates that have done well. So we're looking forward to these qualifiers. I like the qualifiers when they get into the real meat and the real sort of August time. There's some really good ties.
Yeah, and just while we're on that as well, before we wrap up, I can't leave without mentioning Malmo, of course. They have been drawn against. I'm looking for it.
The qualifier, wasn't it?
They will play the winners of the preliminary round, which is, I believe,
Was that the match that was on tonight between, I think it's a team from Estonia or Vikingo Reykjavik, maybe?
Yeah, I think they're playing each other.
Oh, the winners of they've got another. Yeah, so we've got teams from like Andorra, Estonia, Iceland, and San Marino here.
Yeah, Interclub Descaldes from Andorra are in the final, and then there's Viking or Levadia, and whoever wins that, Malmo will play in that qualifier. So yeah, that's one to keep an eye on. I mean, in terms of that draw, you've also got HJK playing a team from I think Latvia, Glimp, as you mentioned there, Klaksvik, and
it should be Vikingo Reykjavik. That could be Sweden against Iceland.
Really. Yeah, that could be. You'd expect Malmo to get through that.
Yeah, you would. Yeah.
To be honest, the season they're having, you never know. And then, of course, in the other Champions path, Midtjylland will play. In the other side of the draw, Midtjylland of Denmark will play Larnaca from Cyprus. So that wraps it up for this episode. We will be back. We'll have a weekend preview, in fact, on Patreon potentially. Either we'll put up some tips, or we will just sort of, have a little mini episode. And you can find us on patreon.com/Nordic Football Podcast for that one. And just in terms of the Patreon content, just wanted to address it quickly because patreon.com/Nordic Football Podcast is where you can get our 10 to watch. If you haven't seen them, of course, Swedberg's already gone. So if you're a scout, maybe you're on top of that before the season even started. We had him, and there's been a few others who have, looking like they might get some big moves. So check that out. And we're going to have a bit of a bonus content this week for you, aren't we, Steve? We've got a bit of extra player profile content planned.
Yes. Thanks to all our patrons for your loyal support. I hope you've enjoyed the weekend previews this season so far. And now the player profiles will be coming out throughout the summer. So keep your eyes peeled for those.
Yeah, we're gonna have some extra player profile content which we've been working on. So look forward to that if you haven't subscribed yet, and if you are a patron, then as always, thanks so much for your support. And you can also follow us on Twitter @NordicFootPod as usual. You can find Steve when he's not falling off a fence. He's on Twitter @MeatmanSoccer, and I'm on Twitter @JFFootball FUTBOL. Or he's on my timeline haranguing me about managers that I've tipped to do well. So you can find him on either one. It's been great to catch up with you again, Steve. I hope you recover well, get some rest, my friend, get some recuperation, and we'll be back very soon.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. And thanks to all the listeners. Take care, all. See you soon. Goodbye.
Bye, everyone.